YouTubers. Welcome back again. Tonight's topic is the smear campaign. The smear campaign normally occurs during the devaluation phase as well as the discard phase and afterwards. And those are covered in my other series, the first one I ever did, called, I believe it's the 3 stages of narcissistic abuse. But those are incorporated in here too because they all relate. But I'll give a typical scenario of how this smear campaign originates. And what goes on normally, of course, are the normal 3 stages. You met Mr. or Mrs. Right. Everything seems perfect. You think you're so lucky to find this person, and they just have everything in common with you, and everything is just so great, and they seem to know you so well. Well, that's how it all begins. That's, of course, the first stage. But what happens eventually is certain little stories the person's told you later you determine aren't true, or have holes in the story or holes in the plots. And you'll notice inconsistencies here and there where they'll tell you they never litter, for example, then you'll watch them throw a McDonald's bag out their window someday. Or another thing would be this person eventually pulls you into their labyrinth. So usually these parts that come out that are strange don't show up right away, or if they do, you don't notice, but eventually you do. And usually the hooks are sunk into you by this point, so the person's pretty much part of your regular life. So it's a lot of times you notice an inconsistency, you ask about it, and you get some kind of non-answer, and you want to believe it even though it doesn't make sense. These people are experts at giving answers that don't make sense or don't address the issue. But eventually you'll start to notice various things that don't add up. And if you say, hey, the other day you made such a big deal in the beginning that you never littered, but I saw you throw that McDonald's bag out your window the other day. What was that about? Well, you'll get some kind of foolish, oh, I just did that because whatever, insert retarded excuse here. And they'll say, I don't normally litter. But then you might see it again. Well, these types of things happen, and eventually you'll start to think on your own when you're not around them. It's like, he's made such a big deal about being anti-litter bug, yet I've seen now 3 occasions. So if you do say, I need to have a talk with you, are you sure you're not a litter bug? And of course, the person will become offended, or act like they're offended, like, I am not a litter bug. And you'll say, well, I saw you do this, and you'll be naming, because this is what they do. It's baiting. That's what they do, is they tell you something that's completely false, and then over the time you spend with them, you start to notice that that's false. So then if you come back to it and say, wait a minute, I thought you said you were anti-litter, and then you can name like the 3 times, and then the person starts to become defensive, like, I don't litter. How dare you call me a litter bug? You think you have to put me down. So they've set this whole thing up to make it out like you are the abuser here, when in fact this person has created a fictitious story and has told you they're the polar opposite of what they really are, and you are using your intuition and figuring out, you know what, and you may even get to the point where you made such a big deal about being anti-litter, I think that was all fake. You were pretending, weren't you? I think you really like to litter. And then they'll be enraged. Don't you dare tell me I told you I only littered those 10 times because of A, B, C, D, fake, retarded excuse. But your point is, with your logical mind, is, okay, a person who never litters doesn't get caught littering 10 times. And that's the logical way. But when you present that to this person, they'll use their normal straight face and say, oh, you're wrong. That's not true. I'm not a litter bug. How dare? And they'll turn it around on you. So that's where this begins. And normally when you start picking up on various inconsistencies and bringing them up, eventually the pile gets bigger of all these different mysteries that just don't make sense and don't fit in. And what happens is eventually you'll start to put it together. They have this mask on. They're wearing this mask for you that says they're anti-litter, they're anti-this, they're anti-that, but you find out otherwise. So of course you'll get angry thinking, why did you tell me that you never littered when I just found your ticket there for being arrested for littering or something like that. And it's just, basically it's like 2 different people, and you try to figure it out. Well, each time you try to figure it out and piece it together, they don't want you doing that. They want you to buy the image they're selling you and not question it, not come to your own conclusions, and if you do, you will be attacked. You will be told, I can't believe you're saying that. I told you why I littered. I'm not a litter bug, but I littered, and it's just as cognitive dissonance is retarded, because anybody can say, well, hey, obviously you do litter sometimes. Why don't you just say you try not to litter, but you do something? But that would be too easy. So anyway, these things build up. And eventually, the flying monkeys, of course, they're involved as well, because hopefully, if he or she's done his or her job, this person will have a network to them. So when you start to bring up these things, you'll be manipulated to be quiet, because each time you bring up something, you'll probably be like yelled at or argued with, or they'll get mad or something. So they'll try to condition you not to bring these things up. But when you do, because you want the answer, they'll be going to your friends that they've become friends with and say, oh, he's getting unstable. He keeps insulting me. He's really mean to me. And this is the beginning stages of the smear campaign. They're building or planting the seeds now that say you're mean, even though you're simply just a regular human being trying to make sure you're in the right place and that you understand the person you're dealing with. But they'll never tell that part. They'll just say, all he does is criticize me, he questions me, he brings up these things from the past that came up later that I kept a secret, but of course he won't say that, or she. But eventually enough things build up that you've got like a whole library of unsolved mysteries. So each time you go for one, like, hey, you did tell me this, now I don't understand, they'll again say, there you, and they'll roll their eyes a lot. You keep bringing that up. And they'll tell the other people, the flying monkeys, he keeps bringing up these things. Never mind, they're things that he never actually resolved, because part of his game is to learn, like, you're the type of person that likes to solve a problem. So if that's the case, he will do the opposite. Will not let you get the problem solved. So you'll still have that hanging there in your head, so then it'll yell and scream and maybe leave, and then later you're like, you know what, I still don't understand this one thing. And they'll be like, I already told you, and they'll be enraged. We don't know if it's real or fake. It's probably phony. But they want to, again, try to scare you like a bully into stop asking these questions. But once it builds up and more things come out you just don't understand, what typically will happen is you'll have like 10 unsolved mysteries that you've tried 10, 20 times to resolve, and each time it's deflected, it's turned back around. Like, well, you never littered, and it still doesn't resolve your issue. So they know this, it seems, and they want to make sure you don't get that satisfaction of being right about, like, the litter bug thing. They should say, you know what, who am I trying to fool? I guess I do litter. But they won't say anything like that. No, so eventually it gets to the point where you become angry, because you sit on your own and think about all these things, and your brain goes through, you know what, for the person to make that scam up and keep it going for so long really was a dirty thing to do. And he says he loves me? Oh, and so you'll like see him again and say, wait a second, I can't believe you would lead me to believe this all this time, and you'll get another defensive type reaction, which doesn't resolve your problem. So you may get to the point where you're furious and you may scream. You may say, you're a fake, you're a liar, or something like that, and you've just taken the bait. And then they'll run to the flying monkeys and say, oh, he yelled at me last night, he's so mean to me, he treats me so terribly, and I'm so good to him. And the friends will buy it. The flying monkeys will buy it. Then when you come to them saying, I think there's something wrong with this person, they'll be thinking, yeah, right, there's something wrong with you. He loves you. You're the one. They'll believe him because he's already gotten to them first in many cases. And that, again, is the first part of the smear campaign. But eventually it gets to be really bad, because these things don't get any better. They get worse, and even more progressively worse. So eventually it gets to a point where you've had it, and you might even say, you know what, I don't want to talk to you for a while. And if you do that, of course, it'll run to the flying monkeys and say, oh, I love him so much, he's just so mean to me, please talk to him. And then they'll be coming to you saying, oh, he really misses you, but he says you're mean. And again, you can't really talk to them because they're not there involved in it. You can tell the flying monkeys what's going on, but they're not going to understand it unless they're living it, because you can't really put a lot of it into words as far as the feelings you get when this person's playing these tricks. And you can tell them what you think, but they'll just think, oh, you're probably just being paranoid, because they'll probably already be programmed to believe that, or brainwashed by the narcissist. But you may like finally have it and scream and throw a fit, and again, hopefully it's in public. Then they'll say, see what is wrong with him, look at him, I'm just sitting here and he's yelling at me. And they'll believe it because they'll see it and they'll think, well, he is crazy. I'm crazy because I'm yelling. Well, I'm yelling because I'm doing the natural reaction to realizing I'm being aggressed against. It's just not like somebody walking up and punching. It's like somebody punching you, but it's in slow motion over several weeks and months, and you're finally realizing, oh my goodness, that person punched me. So then you become enraged, and that's one of the buttons they like to press, because it gets a reaction out of you that's not a typical reaction. But people that don't know this will just see it and think, oh, he's flipped out, look at that. And it may get to the point, though, where you realize that you've been real this whole time, and here this person, it just comes together that they've been phony from day one, and you're angry about that. You're not just going to let them continue being phony. You want an answer. You want to put them in their place. You want to say, hey, that's not the right way to deal with all that love bombing. A friend wouldn't do these things that you've done, and of course, if you're still with this person, they think that you're perfect for abuse because you're sticking around for it. And they'll just keep their normal face as if everything's normal and you've got the problem. And eventually you may be through with them. You may dump the person, or they may already have found your replacement. So after it's all over and you've stopped talking, first off, when they know that you figured out their scam. So their goal for anybody else, including flying monkeys and anybody new they chase after, is that you're the evil X now. You're crazy. You have problems. You are violent. And he might even tell him, he yelled at me once, he did this to me once, and he'll really be convincing, because remember, he's doing that love bomb stuff to the new person, and they have no reason to disbelieve anything he says. And he'll tell them that you are the problem, and you are horrible. So then if you do happen to see them in public or something, or say something, or do something mean, they'll be able to turn to their new target and say, see how crazy he is? I don't even know what he's talking about, yet he or she does. But again, it's all a setup, and you'll just play your role. If they like take your life savings and disappear, then you see them in public and say, you, give me your money. Now they'll turn to their new target. I don't know what he's talking about. He's crazy. He's lost it. Even though maybe he stole all your money and ran off. Well, again, they are perfect actors, so they'll just say, like, I don't know what you're talking about. And it'll look real, especially for the new target, because they want this new person to be wonderful just like you once did. And if you try to warn them, hey, he's bad news, you'll look just like the crazy person he's described you as in his smear campaign against you. He'll tell your friends that you flipped out and you're making false accusations, even though they're real. And the smear campaign works like this. And a lot of times what they do in it is, with their new person they're courting, they will basically take the things they did to you and tell the new person that you did it to them. So they'll say, oh, he lied to me, oh, he stole from me, yet really the other one stole from me and lied to me. So they make themselves out to be the hero or the good guy. And of course, I've had this happen many times where I hated the ex because I believed these stories and found out later the stories were phony. I got to know the ex, and it was actually a whole different story. And of course, I'd go back to the narcissist. It's like, oh, well, he's being two-faced. It's like, oh, no, I think it's you who's being two-faced. And you'll notice, too, if you do try to, like, interfere with the new thing going on, the narcissist will tell the new target, see, he's crazy, he's just kind of trying to cause problems. He wants me back, and that's why he's doing this, because everybody wants me. And the new person will be tempted to believe it. But the smear campaign goes on, and even if you do get hoovered back in and start to have a talk and maybe even say, like, yeah, I didn't like the fact that you were fake during this relationship, that'll be, like, not even addressed. It'll be, you're the one who called me the names. You're the one who ruined things. And they'll take every reaction you gave to their lack of answering, to their lack of accountability, to the discovery of all the scams you've been put through, and they'll use all those to make it out like you are an abusive person for simply pointing out the truth and wanting clarification on something that doesn't make sense, which, if it happened to this narcissist, he or she would be asking the same questions, but when it's him or her, it's a different playing field. But with these smear campaign in public situations, the person knows what buttons to press on you, because remember, you were studied so much in the beginning stages, so knows exactly what to do. So it might even be able to walk up to you quietly and say something really quiet, but it knows it'll get you to create a reaction where you or like scream or do something horrible. So then once again they can say, see how crazy that person is? All I did was say hi. And it's just amazing. They've mastered this. But the smear campaign can extend on to the family, Like, this person comes into your life, turns it upside down, lies to you, creates false information. You discover it all and get mad and throw a fit. Well, this person runs to their family and to their own side, if they have any friends, or their new people, and just tell them how horrible you were, the awful things you did, and it gets them to all hate you. And it's just sickening because it's so phony. But I guess these people believe it because they'll hate you even though you were simply targeted and found out about it. That's the only thing that went on, is this person fooled you. You found out the answer and got mad accordingly, and maybe reacted in self-defense, or at least for your self-respect, to like say, hey, people aren't going to treat me like that, especially ones who claim to be in love. And again, even a friend wouldn't do what you did. But the smear campaign, look out for it. And remember, if you meet someone new, they might give you a preview of what your smear campaign will sound like down the road, because they'll be, if they're quick to tell you about their previous horrible ex, well, that'll be you in the near future.
One more thing to add is just a warning to look out for if you are meeting someone new. Be on the lookout for the person that you find who's new. If he or she tells you that every single ex he or she ever had lied, was violent, stole, any number of things, if every single past partner was evil, that's a red flag for you, because chances are, like I mentioned before, he or she is switching the roles and using what he did to the ex as saying the ex did it to him. And that's just something to look out for, because it's really not realistic if they've had, let's say, 20 partners or 50 partners and every single one of them did something horrible. It's very unlikely you're dealing with a scam artist. But of course, it'll be hard to believe that if they're doing their love bombing right, because you don't want to think that maybe you've made the mistake to pick the wrong person, especially if they've hooked themselves into your life and they're so much a part of your life. Now, you don't want to believe that you actually hooked up with somebody that's a fool and somebody who's evil and phony, so you don't want to believe it. So even when you go to them and question whatever it is, they'll have an answer, and you'll want to believe that answer no matter how retarded it is, because you don't want to think that you've wasted all this time with this new person. But that's just something to think about and look out for. And remember, very few things in life are all or nothing. So if it claims every single ex did this, or I never do these bad things, either one is probably a line of crap.